Hi there. I'm splitting this off from my main review that's coming for House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 3, to focus on the big invented sequence at the end that was not in the books, where Rhaenyra sneaks into King's Landing disguised as a Septa to try to talk with Alicent. And this is just an audio-only podcast. I'm dashing it off just to split it off for focus from the main review. Broadly, my views on this have thankfully been much the same as other major book fan channels, which I've already checked out. That Westeros.org's review, Red Team Review and Preston Jacobs just posted a video about this, and even In Deep Geek, shout out to all of them, have all had basically the same opinion on it as I do, that, well, it wasn't great, but it didn't ruin the show either, and it was presentable, and there is no major controversy. So, okay, let's move on. I hate it when people in the clickbait, screen rants of the world try to hype up major book fan controversy. Book fans are in uproar. Well, if you're citing randos yelling on social media for attention, but in terms of channels you can point to, like news outlets or, like Westeros.org, but the major channels like that, no, we were not particularly offended by it. If you gauge the reaction, there's a few who are, but for the most part, it wasn't book fans versus TV fans. Even at least most book fan channels didn't have a particular problem with it. First off, the actual plot mechanics weren't particularly silly or implausible to begin with. That people can sneak into King's Landing, that's fine. I mean, Dragonstone's right across the bay. Rhaenyra's faction have control of the seas, so she would be able to do that. It's not physically impossible. Like, comparing this to Game of Thrones Season 7's, we kind of forgot about travel time to the wall with a raven zipping down to Dragonstone, then a dragon coming back in what's apparently less than a day, which was silly. Or, like, people didn't complain at the time, they should have more, when Jon leaves Hardhome by boat. He got there by taking a boat from Eastwatch, their port on the coast, and then without explanation, just for the sake of having a dramatic scene, him and all the wildlings appear at the north gate of Castle Black in the middle of the continent to have a showdown with, oh no, is Thorne going to let them in or not? And if he was going to assassinate him, why let him in? But they kind of forgot about the boats. So all these other, like, how could they get there to point C when you have to get through point B first? Where did the Vale army come from for the Battle of the Bastards? But particularly the dragon zipping to the wall thing. Compared to that stuff, nothing in this is physically implausible to me. That, yeah, people sneak into King's Landing, particularly because they know how to get in there. She has a spy master who said, I know how to... the timing of the guards and everything. That is not a problem in terms of how they did it. And that's just point zero here. If it's not physically implausible, so I don't really mind. Rest of this, there are 3 points. I'm trying to keep this focused. There's 3 points that I have to say about this invented Rhaenyra Alicent meeting. Point 1. They say in the behind-the-scenes video, clearly, that this is them wrapping up this subplot that they'd already introduced. That, oh, Alicent mistook Viserys' dying words about the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy. Very specifically, the Alicent part of this. They said, this is us wrapping it up. And I didn't mind it that much. Like, at the end of episode 9, I was worried in the beginning of the next episode they made clear it was a fake-out, that Otto and the rest of the Green Council go, oh, okay, we were already planning to stage a coup for years. It's just a thing for Alicent desperately trying to delude herself. So it didn't really affect the plot at all. Just Alicent's personal characterization, and now they're wrapping up that she knows. No. But again, other book channels cited this specifically, that they had a similar grudging reaction. Well, okay, they do say this is specifically In Deep Geek, Red Team Review, and Westeros.org said, well, they're wrapping up something they invented. That, well, we invented a scene to wrap up something invented and move on from it. Okay, you have to do your homework. I understand that. You have to clean up your mess. Okay, and it wasn't particularly bad or anything. Just the way it was scripted, written, or whatever. Just, we were doing it to end it. That's what everyone's saying, fine. Point 2 is new, however, and I'll link to this in the description box. Since it came out, and that's why I don't like reacting immediately after watching the episode cold, but waiting for the post-episode interviews, that director Geeta Patel gave a couple of interviews talking about this in Screen Rant and Variety, shedding some more light on what they were trying to do. And apparently part of their intent, not all of it, just a part of it, and I get this, and I know it's complicated, was that doubt has been nagging at the back of Rhaenyra's mind. What if my father actually did change his mind at the last minute on his deathbed? And this is making her indecisive in the first few episodes. And it's totally unlikely that, he defended her mere hours before against Vaemon's challenge, but thinking on it, I can see how you can argue not being physically present for your parents' last words on their deathbed can haunt a person. I know, from presidential history in the United States, Teddy Roosevelt, it really affected him that I think his train was late or something. He did not get to his father's deathbed before he passed, and it haunted him forever. This isn't a world where, they have, not that you record that, but just that could haunt a person that I can't know 100% what they said on their deathbed. Is my relative lying or not? You never know. And this, in turn, leads to the problem. If you're saying, oh, well, why would she believe that? She doesn't believe it, but it's subconsciously nagging at her. Okay. But the problem is, inherently, you wouldn't voice that aloud in words. Something subconscious isn't something you say in dialogue, and therefore is unclear. Which is why I think they shouldn't have done it in the first place, but it's not something a crazy person would do. I see what they were trying to do. There's this subtle, subconscious, nagging doubt of, did he disinherit me or not? And there's this small chance, and I get that. Now, there is also a chance, we know from trailers, that Rhaenyra will be talking to Jace about the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy in upcoming episodes, so maybe she will retroactively say in the next episode or two to Jace, I didn't even admit it to myself, but I had doubts about myself that maybe he didn't believe in me, and maybe the Alicent wasn't lying. So that'll fix that, but even if they don't, well, others have pointed out in the comments, is this a case of Benioff and Weiss's these performances, these faces? Where Benioff and Weiss thought they could convey complex character motivations through facial dialogue. And I don't think so. That, again, the problem is, if Rhaenyra said aloud in the first 2 episodes, what if Alicent isn't lying? It would never rise to the level of conscious thought. That she would never vocalize this because it's too absurd. But I can see, you always have doubts. A doubt that's so deep you don't voice it. And this would have worked better in a book. Again, if this was a narrativized book, it's an outline. It's a problem with and you need to work with the medium. That's the issue. That this could have worked in a book. It doesn't work as well in a visual format. But unlike Benioff and Weiss, no, it's not purely tight close-ups on the lead actor faces. Obviously, it's a dialogue scene, so it is close on them, but they're intercutting with wide shots. There was a lot of really good cinematography for it in the cathedral. Geeta Patel's cinematography is mind-blowingly good, where she has these overhead shots, and just you can really feel like you're in King's Landing when Rhaenyra is walking up to the Grand Sept. And they could have substituted another character for that, another subplot. Just the street scenes are well filmed, but within the cathedral itself, they switched to wide shots, intercut with the face shots, and it isn't a lot of dialogueless staring. I mean, it's dialogue, but it's focused on, yes, we grudgingly admit you kind of need to have your main characters meet now and again, and it's difficult that in the books this would have been done through letters, but it works well enough, and it's just, you didn't quite convey this, but I've seen other channels saying, like Indie Geek said word for word, we see what you were trying to do with this. And it's not great, but I'm not going to criticize you for it. It didn't really land, let's move on. I don't consider it a highlight. Whatever. So, just all of that, summing all this up. Point 1, okay, you added this to wrap it up, and point 2, if you need to convey, maybe next episode you'll say, I was kind of doubting myself. And this ties in with what Rhaenyra, the other thing they were saying in behind-the-scenes videos, that Rhaenyra is hardening herself for war, that she sends her small children, the three smallest children, away, and is shifting out of, setting aside her motherhood to harden herself for war. They say that word for word. Sending her children away, shifting her hairstyle to have a war braid like Visenya. So that there was a criticism also that Rhaenyra has been so indecisive the first few episodes, and the first episode 2 and 3 when she's actually talking, I don't want war, I don't want to do all this. Well, she's a mother, and she wonders in the back of her head, did Viserys disinherit me? They wanted to give her a character arc, and now in all of 2 episodes we have now shifted into, oh, okay, I see what you're doing there. She is now in war mode and being decisive. So fair enough. Just, I get that. I don't think you should have tied that in quite as much if you couldn't vocalize it. Then again, if you actually go back, rewatch it, and look at what her words are in the Sept scene, she isn't really talking about peace so much. And people criticized, well, this isn't really a peace attempt. She just keeps asking, what did my father say about me? Well, yeah, in retrospect, the bigger thing to her was, did my father really disinherit? It's not about the war, it's about, what did my father think of me? If you do, and it's not just these performances, these faces, the dialogue they gave actually was, if you pay attention, focused on that I've been doubting myself because of, did my father really say that? So again, I'm not blaming them. It's just, I'm not going to walk around hating on this. I don't think it landed well. But it didn't detract from the show. It was just forgettable. Forgettable is a problem you want to have. Compared to, I don't know, invented Sansa rape or bizarre out-of-character Peace Summit with Cersei in Season 7. Some people have been comparing it to that. I think Red Team Review and President Jacobs similarly dismissed. It's not really like that, because whereas Cersei would not have a peace conference, they've established that Alicent and Rhaenyra are not the warhawks of either of their factions, would want to try to discuss things. They set it up with, I've been trying to send her letters, that it wasn't out of character to do this. Bit clunky, more forgettable than offensive, let's move on. The point is, book fans are not freaking out about this. It isn't a giant controversy. I think more people are still upset about the Meleys Rhaenys thing in episode 9 last year, where she doesn't kill the Greens, and then clearly says, well, because it's kinslaying and the war hasn't started yet, drawing first blood is bad, then Aemon did it. I don't even hate on that, I just say I think it was a little clunky, versus this. It was a clunkier moment, but I'm not going to walk around, I'm probably just going to forget about it by next episode with the battle stuff. As opposed to, I don't think there's really been a major failure in this adaptation yet, where there was an invented thing I didn't like. There were some I liked more than others, but this is just, okay, it didn't really land. It was more bland than anything. Yeah, things you do in letters in a book, correspondence you need to do face-to-face. Like, I wouldn't have objected to if Game of Thrones, I don't know, had envoys. Well, you can't because they're at war, but it wouldn't be utterly insane to say, let's have Robb and Tywin meet at like a bridge across the Trident with 2 groups of envoys, their armies staring at each other, shouting terms at each other. But that doesn't really work, because again, you killed my father under flag of truce, we don't trust you, that they're sending envoys back and forth. But I can see the argument as not insane, because in real life, medieval kings would have, in the wars between England and France, they'd have parleys and stuff. So, okay, I wouldn't, but I can see why you need to make the argument to do it sparingly. Benioff and Weiss overused it. It's a matter of degree. But it isn't these performances, these faces, and on top of that, as, again, others like Indeep Geek did a better video on this, he pointed out, we have heard, I think it's Mirrors Reflecting Mirrors, that he said this because he saw my video, I think, where I said we have had big leaks coming from Wake the Dragon and others that Rhaenyra and Alicent will meet again on Dragonstone, that Alicent will return the Jester coming to Dragonstone, offering peace, and as Indeep Geek pointed out, again, I think you may have seen my video, there is a later point in the books where Alicent, the war stalemates and Alicent does offer peace. She says, well, why not just partition Westeros? The Blacks are mostly in the northeast, the Greens are mostly in the southwest of the Blackwater River. Why not just have a two-kingdom solution? And Rhaenyra refuses. And maybe it's because, the prophecy was, no, Westeros must be united. That works. So I think they were wrapping up one part of this. Alicent thinks it really was. It isn't. And we see in the trailer her going, it doesn't even matter if Viserys said that, which he actually didn't. The Greens were always going to do this. Otto, the Lannisters, they were always going to do this. It doesn't even matter what Viserys said. We saw that in the trailer. So they were ending that and wrapping it up, while at the same time kind of setting up, as Indie Geek pointed out, this is to kind of set up that at the end of the season, Alicent will do it again. It can't happen every episode, but if this happens once or twice a season, I get that. Otherwise, they never see each other again. So the scene didn't really land, but I'm not hating on it. And people are like, oh, people are going to be so upset about this. There were other things I was a little more like. My real complaint was this is screen time that would have been better spent on having, because it's a rehash. But maybe it was a rehash they needed to wrap things up. Maybe this would have been better spent on more scenes between Rhaenyra, Rhaenys, Baela, and Rhaena. Like all four of them or three of them having a three-way conversation, because Rhaena's leaving. Or that, like, at the small council, that we do have Baela and Rhaenys there. Maybe they should have an aside with Rhaenyra more. There already was one with Rhaenys at the beginning of the episode, but another thing is Alicent, I didn't really see where the Helena scene was going, and it was short. Maybe they should have had more scenes with Alicent and Helena. Or I liked seeing Alicent's brother introduced, and he is a recurring character. They'll have more scenes later, but should have had more time with her brother Gwaine. That, in terms of time usage, I don't think this is the best use. But then again, they've been willing to have a 70-minute episode last week. So I don't think it's a zero-sum game where they cut those scenes to make time for this. If they wanted such scenes between Rhaenys, Baela, and Rhaenyra, three-way conversation, or a three-way conversation between Alicent and Gwaine about Helena, they would have added them. That this didn't detract from that. They chose not to do those. That's a separate criticism, but for pacing, and pacing is a thing. But the actual scene as it played out was inoffensive, and the phrase I'm using here is this whole ending thing was at best inoffensive. It is not a season highlight. It didn't add anything. But on that spectrum of at best inoffensive, I'm at the top of the spectrum. I go, oh, this was inoffensive. I don't have a problem with it. Let's move on. So whatever, that I'm not annoyed about this. And there were other things. The other things we were annoyed about from episode 1 were they toned down Blood and Cheese. I've already made 2 videos on how I actually came around to agreeing with that. And that the Starks had more to do in the book with Jace that got cut, but now there's rumors that they've spaced it out across the season because we see shots of Jace at the Twins with the Winter Wolves, so I'm holding off on that I think they just spaced it out, so I'm okay with this. Oh, I know this is like a 20-minute rant that this is why I separated it out for time. I said there were 3 points. Well, point 0 is the plot mechanics aren't impossible. Point 1, they were wrapping up a storyline. Point 2, they kind of wanted this to be this nagging doubt in Rhaenyra's mind. If you pay attention to the dialogues more about what did my father think of me, I get that. But the third thing I haven't gotten to yet was, and this is arguably the main point for me, I had this massive sense of relief watching it, because the clickbaiters and the rumor mill and the telephone game taking real leaks and blowing them out of proportion hyped us up on a scale of months that Rhaenyra and Alicent were going to have sex in the Sept. And I realized that probably not true, but then others were saying, well, no, not sex, but they'll start kissing a little or something because of their passionate emotions, and then immediately get angry again or something. And that seemed just plausible enough in the back of my mind. Again, doubt in the back of your mind is the whole theme here. Where it's like, no, they wouldn't do that. But what if they would? Because you never know. And there's this nagging doubt in me for weeks now. What if they actually do something so fanfiction-y as to outright have them briefly kiss or something, just giving in to the shippers? Even though, well, my thing, I'm not opposed to if they did that like in season one. It doesn't make sense at this late point in the narrative. It would be giving into the fanfickers and the fan shippers that I don't think it would make structural sense to do that at this point. Who should we be seeing kissing? We should be seeing, Jane Eyre with Jess Redfort next episode or two. I'm not opposed to that. It's just structurally this doesn't make sense for the characters at this point. So I had this wave of relief that and again, it's even more. I think you could, even if you're one of the Rhaenicent people, I think it's arguably more emotional and erotic if it's subtext than if it's just let's just have them making out. It's just body parts when it's really their emotions and dialogue bouncing off each other are really what's more important anyway. So even for the sake of the Rhaenicent people, who I get what you're doing and not opposed to that, it's just I think having them actually kiss would lose all subtlety and be poor writing for Rhaenicent. I get that. So just there was this wave of relief that they're not really going to have them profess their have kissing or sex or something. And just, you notice how the clickbaiters with their red arrows and fake leak titles in their image slides, you know who they are, have been consistently claiming, oh, Jace and Cregan are going to have sex. In very crass fashion said, oh, Rhaenyra and Alicent are going to mash their, I'm not going to say the word, genitals together next episode. Then it didn't happen. And not a single damn one of those alleged fake leaks turned out to be true. You know what leaks were true? The ones that the spy community has been putting out for months and citing with a reputation, like Wake the Dragon, House the Dragons, a couple of others, Redanian Intelligence. That's real leaks with cited evidence. If we saw a casting sheet leak or filming leaks, not, there isn't anyone else saying this, but I insist to you, some guy in my DMs is telling me this, and I believe, and I don't even care if it's true or not. I'm trying to entertain you with fake leaks. Don't joke about, this is serious, people live with it. Don't joke about whether there's going to be a queer relationship or not. Queer baiting is a thing that people criticize. Don't mess with people like that. And that's the clickbaiters. On top of that, and I don't blame them for this, but even Wake the Dragon, she said, oh, I was yanking your chain. But it's different from her because her other leaks were accurate. She implied, without stating, over Twitter, and with a smile emoji, oh, Jace Cregan is coming, and then, oh, Rhaenyra and Alicent, and kept saying, this will break the internet, this will break the internet. From that context, I said, from that context, you made me think they were going to kiss. And she said, no, I thought people would be really upset about just them meeting, and I was yanking your chain. Just, no. So, yeah, this is, again, broad consensus, or at least half. I haven't seen everyone's stuff yet, but even what you'd consider hardcore book channels, Westeros.org, Red Team Review, Preston Jacobs, In Deep Geek, me, are all just saying, I thought this would be worse. Okay, it was presentable, it was inoffensive, at best inoffensive. I wouldn't consider it a highlight, but forgettable is something I can live with, and okay, you're wrapping something up, let's move forward. I think there's going to be more discussion forever about should you have toned down Blood and Cheese or not. Like, by the end of the season, I think we'll be talking about Blood and Cheese. We won't be talking about this anymore. And I agree with the Blood and Cheese change, so fine. Sorry I dashed this off very quickly. I know it's July 4th in the United States, and it's an election day in Britain where they're going to declare their freedom from the Conservatives, or hopefully. I'm worried about France with Macron's election, but we'll see what happens. So I'm just dashing this off because it would have taken 25 minutes out of my full episode review. So I'm more concerned about the Dragon Egg stuff, but that's going to be a separate video after this. And then after that, my full episode review, and I'll just quickly say, because I make a 7-point list, that point I split off into its own 25-minute thing. Check that out. So these other videos are coming on the eggs, and then the full review, please follow me after the jump.